All right, let's do this. Hi, my name is Richard Lesperance. I go by the name of Men Richard. Welcome to A Better Lifestyle. Today, my guest is John Munn, and he's a business consultant. He specializes in time optimization. So I think you guys are going to enjoy this episode. So please, John, tell a little bit about yourself, your story, and we'll get started.
Hi, Richard. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here. So, my story, I guess, is now, as you mentioned, I'm a business consultant and coach, and I specialize in working with entrepreneurs, usually six figures to seven figures, but I do help with startups as well. But I specialize in working with entrepreneurs to help the business grow without making the job of being an entrepreneur feel like a job. So I help entrepreneurs grow their business while working 20 hours or less per week. And they actually feel and act like business owners rather than like employees. A lot of people, when they build a business for the first time, build their own job within the business as the entrepreneur, very similar to jobs that they've had in the past or jobs that they've seen other people do, which usually is as an employee. So I help business owners grow their business as a business owner so that they can enjoy the business and make more money while they do it. So my background is I've actually run businesses, which is great. So I started the world's first brewery to specialize in ancient alcohol, which I then sold. I started a social enterprise called Global Digital Week, and we sold courses and digital training and ran events at universities in 97 countries worldwide. And then I currently run, and it takes me about 5 hours per month, but I currently run a social enterprise called Zero Smart, which is an environmental sustainability social enterprise. So I do the consulting kind of as the main time thing that I do because I really enjoy helping people and seeing that difference. My main income comes from Zero Smart. But yeah, with that, I'm very data focused. With this, I actually get to see the impact and meet people and do that kind of thing. So yeah, I business consultant specializing in time productivity for entrepreneurs.
Good. So how were you able to reduce the time of work from what hours? How many hours were you doing?
Yeah, so with each business, it's been different. With my first business, with the brewery, I spent weeks and weeks doing every part of the business. I created the logo, I did the packaging, I brewed the stuff myself, I sold it, I did everything. And I'd spent weeks just doing the logo because I thought that was really important at the time. And I spent weeks on the branding, and branding is important, but as the business owner, I couldn't afford to have spent weeks on that. And so looking back on it, that was a mistake. And that's fine. I didn't have anybody that could tell me that it was a mistake, and everything suggested that that was the right thing to do, but it wasn't. And I find that entrepreneurs do a lot of things like that, that they spend a lot of time on things that feel important or seem important and make them feel good, make them feel productive, but actually they don't move the business forward. So a lot of the time, the things that I do with the entrepreneurs that I work with is I'm that kind of like a spotter at the gym. I'm there, I'm seeing what you're doing, and I'm saying, hey, your form over there could be a bit better. Or hey, this bit here, why are you doing that? Or why are you doing it like this? If you change the technique of how you do it, you'll find it so much easier. So I'm that external pair of eyes, and a lot of the time, it's seeing things from a business point of view and saying this is great, but it's not going to move your business forward. So let's look at the things that do move your business forward, and let's do more of them, and let's do less of the other things. So that's a simplification, but more or less that's what I work with entrepreneurs to do, to spot things that move the business forward and then to make those things more efficient. So introduce systems to make them more effective, introduce automation, help people with that kind of things. Um, in order to make sure that the stuff that you do on the day-to-day moves you forward.
But in your own life, how were you able to reduce the hours in your own life from the companies that you built?
Yeah, so I followed the same model. Um, it wasn't until I was feeling a bit burned out. I was probably working 70 hours a week, and I was in a position where I was quote unquote successful. I'd won lots of awards for my business. I was making good money. Things were going well. Um, but I saw this video about jelly beans, which sounds silly, but it was just this like 2 minute long video, which was a guy dumps a bunch of jelly beans onto the floor, and each jelly bean represents one day in your life. And he takes it apart and okay, this is how much you're asleep. This is how much you commute to work. This is how much you do this and that, etc. And at the end, you've got this tiny, tiny pile left, and it's like, okay, this is the time you've got. What are you going to do with it? Um, and one of the things he mentions in that video is this is how much time you're going to spend with your family. And at the time, because I was working 70 hours a week and quote unquote successful with things, I looked at my own time and I realized that although the business was going well, I hadn't seen my family in ages. And when I calculated how many times I was likely to see my mum again, based on how many times I'd seen her per year over the last few years and her life expectancy, I realized that I was probably only going to see her about 20 more times in my entire life. And for me, that felt unacceptable. So I went kind of on that productivity kick and I started looking into everything and changing the way that I did things. So, as I mentioned earlier, finding the things that move the business forward and getting rid of everything else. So, the absolute fundamentals of that is understanding where you spend your time and what tasks you complete. So, one of the first things that I did, and one of the first things I get other entrepreneurs to do, is to track their time to understand what they've spent their time doing. Because if you know where you spent your time, we can start to see, hey, you spent 2 hours on this thing and that thing moved your business forward this much. Great, let's do more of that. Or, hey, you spent 10 hours on social media, you doing Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, whatever, and actually nothing really happened. And actually, if we look into this, nothing's likely going to happen. You're one person, you can't effectively run 5 channels very well. And so when I did that, and when I do that with entrepreneurs, we tend to spot, hey, these are the things we should focus on, and these are the things, let's drop them. Let's just get rid of them, or let's significantly simplify them, or whatever it is. And that thing alone, you can normally find within 2 weeks, you can normally halve your work week just by cutting out all the stuff that doesn't really do anything and focusing more on the stuff that does do stuff. Then you get into more technical things about, okay, how do we design the system to be more useful? But yeah, within a couple of weeks, you can usually totally redesign the way that you work so that you work significantly less, but also so that things run more smoothly. And if things are running more smoothly, more efficiently, you'll find that you make more money because things are working properly. It's one of them things that sounds counterintuitive at first, but when people explain it like that, it's like, yeah, of course, you know, I might be working fewer hours, but things work more efficiently. Of course, I'm going to make more money, you know. So that's what I did, fundamentally tracking my time and seeing what's worthwhile and what isn't, but then looking into systems, how to improve systems.
So when you start a business from scratch, it takes time and people put hours, like maybe 7 days a week at the beginning for a period of time. It could be 1 year, 2 years, like they're pushing. So how would they, because the process of building the business, it takes time. So how do they avoid the trap of being trapped after in the process while they're building the business?
Yeah, this is one of the most common things that I see. Entrepreneurs that have built it and have always just they do everything because they've always done everything. And it's a really hard trap to escape from, especially without somebody saying, hey, yeah, why are you doing that thing? And fundamentally, what that comes down to is people don't reevaluate the value of a task. So when you're a single person business at the start, it probably is valuable for you to spend time calling potential customers or emailing potential customers or whatever it is. And that is valuable when you need to do it and because you need to get your first few customers. However, as things develop over time, the value of that task changes. So usually that task I, often drops in value, or your time rises in value. So when you first start, if you're there's something called your effective hourly rate, which is how much on average you make per hour for every hour you work. A bit like a wage, I guess, but you can calculate this as an entrepreneur. At the start, your effective hourly rate is probably quite low because you've only just started and it's probably similar to a job. $20, $30, $50 an hour, $100 an hour, whatever it is. As the business gets going and we start getting consistent revenue, you'll see that your effective hourly rate increases significantly. You should be looking $300, $400, $500 per hour of your time. Okay. Based on the amount of money that you bring in per month and how many hours you work to get that money. Now, if your time is worth $500 an hour, but you're doing a task like customer support, which you can pay somebody $20 an hour for, you're kind of, in effect, losing $480 per hour that you do that task because you should be doing a $500 per hour task. Not all tasks are created equal. Some drive the business forward more than others. So the trap that entrepreneurs do is because they've always done that task, they continue doing it, and they're scared of hiring people and training people in because there is a cost upfront to doing that. When you first hire people, it takes time, it's expensive, they don't do it as well as you did, and we can make those a little bit better, but they're always there. Those problems that are at the front, and so you see that obstacle that you need to overcome, and you don't do it as the entrepreneur. But the problem is because you don't get over that initial hump, you've got that the problem exists forever, and so you don't get to scale the solution, and so your effective hourly rate is capped at basically whatever the lowest value tasks you're spending your time on. It affects how much you can earn per hour, so you can't scale yourself. So as an entrepreneur, when they first start, people fail to relinquish control or fail to automate. They get into that mindset of this is how it's always been done, so this is how we do it, which, as everybody knows, if they've ever had a job at any corporate, kills the business and kills everything. But that's what we slip into. This is how it's always been done, and this is how I'm going to do it. So often you need somebody to challenge you and say, well, this might be how it always was done, and this might have made sense at the start, but it doesn't make sense anymore. So let's reevaluate this, or let's look into this system, or let's hire somebody, or let's automate this, or whatever it is. Make you aware of what options exist, and then help you implement them so you can grow and scale your time and your efforts as the business grows.
So what would you say are some the main challenges that people have in managing time?
Yeah, I think the main challenge that people have when managing time is often sticking to it. A lot of the time, people know the things that they need to do, but actually going out and doing them is a different matter. But also, people get stuck fighting fires. You know, things always come up and things always happen. And I've 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 got a new client recently who runs a very big online e-commerce store, and we're in this at the moment with him, where he wakes up and the first thing he does at work every day is replies to his emails, his customer emails, which sounds like a good idea because you're reacting to the biggest, most urgent issue every day. You're helping your clients first thing every day. Unfortunately, this tends to lead to people being reactionary throughout the rest of the day. What you do when you first start working tends to set your mindset for the other things that you do. And so you end up just reacting to things for the whole day. And so the business doesn't move forward because you're just treading water. You're just doing the things that are urgent, but not necessarily important. They need to be done, but they don't move the business forward that much. It's not like some of the other tasks. So one of the things that we've done with him, which has really helped, is just in the first hour, it's only for an hour every day, we do something that is going to move the business forward, that is proactive. It's not set by anybody else. He decides what it is. It's whatever he thinks is the most important thing that's going to move the business forward. Now, his customers aren't going to mind that the reply is an hour later. There are very few people that that's a major problem for, right? But it means that he gets to be proactive at the start of the day and actually do something important that moves the business forward. And then he can react to the other things. And so there's very little downsides to that, but the upside is you actually do something every day that moves the business forward significantly. And that kind of change in mindset compounds and means that he then starts thinking proactively about, hey, why don't we do that? Rather than, oh, I need to do this, is why don't we do that? It's a different kind of approach to it. So in terms of your question of what's the biggest challenge with time, the first thing is actually doing the thing is always hard. And there are things that we can do to make it easier, but it's always hard. But also making sure that you're in control of your time. A lot of business owners forget that they are the business owner. They're in charge. And a lot of people let other people control their time. A great phrase that I heard is your email inbox is a to-do list that's decided by other people. People email you, and that, for some reason, that makes it your task. You have to reply to them, and you didn't decide that. Whoever emailed you has decided that that's now your to-do list. And you're the business owner. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. But if you do want to do it, let's figure out how we can do it that makes sense for you and makes sense for the business, and let's do the things that move you forward.
You mentioned some of the wrong things that people do when it comes to time management. Do you have any other example mistakes that people do?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a whole load of these. There's a lot of people try something once and then never return to it. And a lot of the time when they try it, it's a small tweak will make a big difference. Or not everything works for everybody and people are different. But I think some periodically coming back to things is useful. Time management wise, a lot of people have absolutely no idea what they do. Most entrepreneurs, when they work with me, will say, "Hey, I spend 30 hours a week doing this," or I only spend an hour a week replying to customer emails or whatever. But when we actually track their time, their estimates are way out, like so wildly out that it is funny. And the simple thing of just tracking and knowing how you spend your time makes such a significant fundamental difference to how you run a business, because now you have the data of what makes a difference. And as a business owner, time is your biggest cost at the start. So there are two major things that people get wrong in terms of their time management within the business at the start, within the early stages. There are things like time boxing which make a difference for some people, and yeah, there are lots of little techniques. Is different person to person. People forget that they need to rest, that resting and recharging isn't unproductive. You know, people say, "Oh, I really need to take a break," and then they'll be on a break and they'll think, "How can I make this break more productive?" And it's that's totally against the point of what you're doing. The most important, most productive thing you can do on this break is rest or recharge, which are two different things. But people forget there are things that are not created equal. So for some people, watching TV really recharges them. For other people, it's reading a book. And knowing which one makes a difference for you is important. But people forget that they need time and space to just not think. Being able to switch off and just not think about things makes such a big positive difference for your business. And people don't schedule the time in for doing that. One of the things that I've done with some of my clients is prescribe that they go for a walk, usually in the middle of the day, but go for a walk without anything, no headphones, no audiobook, no nothing, and just walk. And a lot of them say that's one of the most productive things that they do all day because they get to decompress, but also their brain starts to come up with solutions for things that were difficult problems. And as an entrepreneur, a lot of the time you get trapped thinking, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to work. If I'm not sat on my computer doing this work, the business isn't moving forward. When sometimes the thing you can do that will move the business forward the most is just to go for a walk, to turn everything off and take a break. And people don't see that, recognize that as being productive, but it is. And it's important that you spend time during the week making sure you're sleeping properly, eating properly, and resting properly. That is productive time. So, what do people get wrong about time? That's one of the biggies. That's one of the big things.
So for someone who's starting out in entrepreneurship, let's say they have a 9 to 5 and they're trying to build a side hustle business at the same time. They finish at 5, they reach home at 7, and then they start maybe from 7 to 1 o'clock. How would they manage their time properly, especially if they have more things to do than they have time?
Yeah. Very simple thing. There is get rid of most of the things that you think you need to do because most of the things you think you need to do, you probably don't need to do at all. They're nice to haves rather than actually need to haves. And if you're working 9 to 5 and then coming back and running your business, the amount that you can get done in just 1 hour per day is incredible. As long as that 1 hour per day is spent doing something useful. And a lot of the time when people start a business, they spend weeks thinking about the name. They spend weeks doing the branding. They spend so much time doing Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and this and that. And honestly, you probably don't need to do any of that at the start. You start just as a freelancer, just with your name or whatever. Probably don't even need a business name to start trading. Depends on your country and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes you don't even need to register. In the UK, you don't need to register as a business when you first start. I'm not a lawyer, so double check with your own jurisdiction. I have to say that. But slimming it down to what's the thing that's going to make this business money at the start. There is an order of priorities with a business. I call it the business hierarchy of needs. I post about that on my LinkedIn at John JD Munn. But the first thing you need to do is start bringing revenue into the business. How do you start making some money? Profit can come after. Figure out how to make that profitable. But you need to have customers. You need to start making some money. Okay. Then you can figure out some of the other issues. Thing like LinkedIn, a content strategy, or Facebook, post on Facebook, whatever, takes a long time to get those kinds of customers. It's not immediate. You might not have the cash to run ads. The first thing you should probably do is warm leads, people you've worked with in the past, people that you know already. And that's just sending a few emails. So if you don't have time to run the business, you're doing something wrong. Yeah, you only need half an hour to an hour, ideally every day, but even if it's just a 2 hour, 3 hour block once a week, that's enough. And I know that sounds like hardly anything, but I have worked with clients and we have set up businesses that they only have an hour every day to work on, that we've got to 200K, 300K a year within a couple of months. It's doable. And then when you've got the revenue coming in, you then switch across. You only need an hour every day to do this, but you need to make sure that that hour that you spend is spent on things that are useful, spent on the thing that's most likely to drive your business forward the most. That's the bit that's hard. Knowing what it is that's likely to drive your business forward and actually doing it and ignoring everything else. Because it's scary to not do social media because you see everyone else doing social media. And it's scary not to do branding because you see everyone else spending time on branding. But you need to focus on the thing that's going to drive your business forward the most.
So what about we know automation and delegation is a big thing. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, so Um, hopefully, okay. There's an acronym. I was thinking about how to go about the question. There's an acronym that I like for this, which is ESAD, which sounds a bit like a sad robot or something, but ESAD, which is eliminate, simplify, automate, delegate. So that's the order that you do things in. So what we were just talking about a second ago was if you don't feel like you have time, let's eliminate all the things that are taking your time that don't drive the business forward. That's the first one, is eliminate. Okay. The second thing I talked about earlier as well, which is let's simplify. Let's look at the systems we've got. Let's reduce the number of things we do. The classic one for this is social media. So if you're doing 5 social media channels, that's a lot of work. Even if you automate it and do all that kind of stuff, it's still a lot of work. Let's simplify it first. Let's just do one channel, or ideally, let's eliminate it altogether if we don't need it. But that varies business to business. So eliminate first, get rid of things you don't need to do, then simplify the things that you're doing, simplify the systems, and then we get into automation. Okay. Usually, a lot of people have saved so much time already just doing those first 2 things that they don't even need to automate. A lot of businesses, sometimes people automate for the sake of automating. And I'm in the camp where I believe a lot of the time, especially in the early stages of the business, before you're at 500K plus, you need to do some things that don't scale very well. And you need to do some things that seem counterintuitive, that seem inefficient, but ultimately they help the business more. A really great example of this is Airbnb. When they first started, the founders, Brian Chesky, the founding team, actually flew out to New York and went to see the apartments that were listed, and they took the photos themselves of the apartments that were listed, and they posted them online, and they met every host, they did everything. Now that to us sounds, why are you doing that? That's so inefficient. You could have hired somebody to do that, or you could have got them to do it themselves. And it's by seeing the places and helping the people do that, it gave them a better understanding of the business. So they could have automated things like that, but actually, or delegated things like that, but by doing it themselves, it was more important. But when you first start, eliminate first, simplify, then automate, and the amount of things you need to automate are minimal. I very strongly recommend automating a referral sequence to ask your clients to refer you. Not enough businesses do that. And a review sequence to ask your clients to leave you a review. Not enough businesses do that either. The referral is the most powerful one. You should be asking clients regularly, at least every 3 months. Every person you've ever worked with, every person that's ever shown an interest in working with you, ask them to refer you. Do they know somebody like them that would like to work with you? And then the last thing is delegation. If you can't automate it, think about, okay, who can we delegate this to? And usually when you first start, it's a bit more expensive, but you want to work with freelancers rather than with employees. So it gives you more flexibility. But delegation is the hardest one to get right. And there's a reason why it comes last. It's harder, it's higher risk, it's more expensive, but it is valuable. But it should only be done as a last resort.
Okay. In about 2 minutes, can you give us some? Are there any tools? I know in one podcast you had mentioned a tool called Toggle. Any other tools that people could use for time management?
Yeah, so Toggle is great. That's what I use to track my time, the Toggle. I use Calendly for all my meeting scheduling, so people can just find a time that works for them and schedule that. I use Zoho for my email, which has been wonderful as well. The thing that a lot of people don't realize is you@yourbusiness.com is really easy to get, and you can get one free with Zoho as well. But it just looks a bit more professional. I only use Wix for my website. It's quick, it's easy, it's a drag and drop website builder. You probably don't even need a website at the start, but if you're at the stage where you're starting to build a website, I really like that. It's quick, it's easy, it's cheap. You don't need to hire somebody. You can get a website done within an hour or 2 hours, a very basic one. up and out. There are different scheduling things that some of my clients use. Some of my clients love Trello, some love Monday. Every person's different with what kind of software for that kind of thing that they like. But usually I'm quite good at seeing, hey, you're this kind of person, you're probably going to like this one. There are automatic calendar schedulers as well. So some people that works really well, where they say what task they need to do and the AI automatically schedules it on their calendar for them. But again, it depends what kind of person you are. But I've got all that kind of stuff. It's listed on my website. It's under the free resources part of my website, which is johnjdmunn.com /free resources. And you can find everything there. So tools that different clients use that I've worked with and what everything does. And the tools that I use as well. MailerLite as well for my email automations.
Besides your website, where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, so I only post on LinkedIn. I've reserved my name on other social media channels, as I think everybody should, but I only post on LinkedIn, which is /in/John JD Munn. You can find me on my website, which is johnjdmunn.com. That's J and D, the letters, rather than JD as a name. And I also write a weekly, totally free weekly productivity newsletter called Work Smart Wednesday, which you can find on Substack or on my website. But Work Smart Wednesday, it's just 3 tips each week that will help you, always actionable, that you can implement that will help you improve your business and help you work less and make more. So yeah, the main thing, find me at johnjdmunn.com, my website, and it's got the links to all that other stuff there for you.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap it up. Thanks, John, for being here. It was nice meeting you and talking to you. So on that note, thank you everybody for taking the time to listen to the podcast. Welcome to A Better Lifestyle. My name is Richard Lesperance, and I go by the name of my man Richard. And I was with John Munn, and I will see you on the next episode, everybody. Goodbye.